In Russia's Far East lies a forbidden and isolated land of shadowy forests. This is Primorye. Only the most adventurous make the trek into this wilderness. But those who do are rewarded. Like spirits from a world long gone, some of the rarest animals on Earth hide among the trees. This may be our last chance to witness these extraordinary creatures. Soon, Primorye's secret forests may disappear forever. Russia's wilderness is unimaginably vast. Travel its length and you'll encounter the high peaks of the Ural Mountains, the dark splendor of the Siberian forests, the crystalline beauty of the Arctic, and the stunning volcanoes of Kamchatka. Russia is the largest country in the world, spanning more than 6.5 million square miles. In Russia's remote Far East, the region of Primorye remains isolated and pristine. This land is home to more endangered species than almost anywhere else on the planet. It's an otherworldly place where one of the planet's rarest tigers drifts in and out of the shadows like a royal spirit. And one of the world's largest owls haunts the night. Many of the animals who take refuge here are in danger of extinction. But Primorye's forests are at risk too, as loggers claim their valuable timber. The situation may look dire, but in this unpredictable land, anything is possible, as evidenced by Primorye's most famous resident, the Amur tiger, named after the region's great Amur River. All tigers are rare, but this is the second rarest in the world, and the largest. Russia's tigers were hunted for sport until 1947, by which time only 40 were left in the entire country. The population made a comeback, and today there are close to 500. This magnificent predator is back from the brink. But for how long? If the forests continue to vanish, Primorye's tiger may go the way of its neighbor, the Amur leopard. There are barely 30 of these leopards in the wild, and every one lives in Primorye. In this remarkable footage, a male Amur leopard emerges from the shadowy forest. With so few of these elusive leopards in the wild, it's near impossible to catch them on film. Amur leopards are solitary creatures. A single animal will lay claim to approximately 30 square miles of territory. Every acre of forest raised by loggers or farmers threatens the future of this big cat. Unless extraordinary steps are taken, this species will disappear from Earth forever. But this leopard isn't the only creature to make its last stand in Primorye's forests. Asiatic black bears may look cute, but they're notoriously aggressive, deadlier even than the American black bear. These bears will attack to kill at even the slightest sign of threat. Seemingly unprovoked attacks against humans are not uncommon. Their short, strong claws allow for easy climbing. These bears are hunted for the bile contained in their gallbladders, highly valued in traditional Chinese medicine. Demand far exceeds supply. Ounce for ounce, it's more expensive than gold. In just 30 years, the population of Asiatic black bears on Earth has dropped by half. As the forests reach the coast, the scene is far more tranquil, at least at first sight. The warm current coming from the Sea of Japan creates one of Wild Russia's best-kept secrets, an underwater world as spectacular as any in the Caribbean. In this world, camouflage is the ultimate defense. The color-changing, shape-shifting octopus is the reigning champ of hide-and-seek. But this laid-back octopus's garden hides a vicious paradise. Here, stones are alive and positively deadly. It may look like a harmless pufferfish, but this Japanese fugu fish carries one of the strongest toxins in the animal kingdom. It's almost 1,200 times more poisonous than cyanide, and there's no known antidote. The tiniest portion of fugu poison will slowly paralyze the victim's muscles, but not its brain. It's an agonizing death, made all the more terrifying because the victim is fully aware of the poison's deadly progression. Every corner of Primorye reveals a secret world. About 150 miles inland from the Sea of Japan, where Russia meets China, Lake Khanka dominates the landscape. It's the largest body of fresh water in all of East Asia, spanning 1,500 square miles, about the size of the state of Rhode Island. This heron spies a fish, but something distinctly unfishy lurks below the surface. This mysterious creature of the depths is a Chinese soft-shelled turtle, also known as Pelodicus sinensis. Lake Khanka is its last remaining refuge in the wild. This turtle's natural habitat is fast disappearing, and it's now considered at high risk of extinction. The border between Russia and China runs straight through Lake Khanka. A turtle that makes the short swim to the Chinese side of the lake risks ending up as the key ingredient to a famous Chinese delicacy, turtle soup. During winter, they hibernate under the frozen lake, but when the weather warms, they make the most of the ice-free months. To an ambitious turtle, that means sunbathing. The biggest adults, with shells close to a foot in diameter, bully others out of the way. But it's not always so easy. Eventually, each turtle finds its place in the sun. They'll do this every day while the heat lasts, only breaking off to hunt for food. A succession of storms flood the Amur rivers, tributaries, and streams, all of which make their way to Lake Conca. As waves hit the western edge of the lake, they flow over the sandbanks. Strong winds whip across the wide lake basin. Gulls feel right at home. After a storm, the Chinese turtles move in to check out a new lagoon. When it formed, it trapped thousands of small fish. Bad news for the fish, but for everyone else, it's a free lunch. With such an abundance of options, this turtle can afford to be choosy. It only eats the head. But the fish have more to worry about than just brain-sucking turtles. Russia's Primorye is home to some of the Earth's rarest and strangest animals. In Lake Conca, a mysterious fish is on the prowl. For a voracious snakehead fish, this shrinking water pool is like an all-you-can-eat Russian buffet. Like a muscular 4-foot-long eel, these nightmarish creatures can leave the lake for land and live up to 3 days out of the water. A single leap and this snakehead's on land, but he's missed his target and heads back into the murky depths of Lake Conca, still on the hunt for his next meal. The Chinese turtles come back to shore to lay and bury their precious eggs in the sand. This raccoon dog is determined to find as many eggs as possible. Unlike other dogs, the raccoons are not fast-moving and don't chase prey. Instead, their sense of smell turns them into relentless scavengers. They have strong noses and poor eyesight, so they're easily spooked. Eventually, this raccoon dog's persistence pays off. And his odds of locating more eggs are good. He's got plenty of time. The eggs won't hatch for about 60 days. Hatchlings lucky enough to survive flooding and predation make a mad dash for the water. For these coin-sized turtles, life is one peril after another. Just crossing the shore is a treacherous journey. Hovering relatives don't offer much protection. The hatchlings are on their own. Some young hide along the shoreline, floating like leaves, hoping to fool predators. Then they head for cover in the lotus beds. But predators lurk among the lotus flowers too. Snakehead fish are always on the prowl. This turtle, intent on eating, is oblivious to the danger. But he's in luck, and yet again, the snakehead misses a meal. Flowing along the southeastern edge of Primorye is one of Russia's most famous waterways, the Great Amur River. It forms a nearly 1,800-mile-long border with China. The hundreds of untouched and hidden rivers that branch off the Amur are the lifeblood of the Sikatoline forest. Tucked within the dense greenery along these secluded waterways are secret worlds. In a calm river pool, frogs play the dating game. Even giant blood-sucking mosquitoes can't break the amorous mood. Already, a tadpole army shimmers in the backwaters. But on the shore, sandy footprints lead to a killer concealed in the trees. In Russia's Far East, the shadowy forests of Primorye shelter some of the rarest creatures on Earth. Like the endangered Blakiston's fishing owl. Only about 2,000 remain in the wild, almost all in Primorye. But as old-growth forests are felled for timber, this owl is in a fight for its life. It will only nest in cavernous old-growth trees, preferably waterfront property, where it can readily catch fish throughout the year. This chipmunk's lucky. He's not on the owl's menu today. He's got his own dinner to think about. Chipmunks bury food all the time, but their memory span is only 3 days. So they forget where the previous hoards are and have to search relentlessly, hoping to find something. Some look for an easy meal. It's always quicker to raid another chipmunk's full pantry. As light fades, the night shift begins. Blakiston's fishing owls are not only one of the rarest in the world, they're the largest, standing 2.5 feet tall and weighing in at close to 10 pounds. When you're this heavy, it's easier to walk than fly, which is why these owls hunt for fish along the riverbanks. Adults may stare for hours before pouncing. The hungry chick gobbles down the fish. Chicks need to feast on fish all night, every night, to gain the strength they'll need to leave the nest in just over a month's time. For the parents to feed themselves as well, they'll need to hunt until dawn. It's extraordinarily rare to even see these owls by day. And this is one of the first times the Blackiston's fishing owl has been filmed on its nighttime hunt. The adult stares for hours, waiting for the right moment. His nighttime vision is near perfect, allowing him to spy the tiniest fish swimming below. He rarely misses. Soon, the monsoons come to Primorye. From July through September, the forest feels like a jungle, with up to 3 feet of rain drenching the land. The owl's hollow tree hideout has filled to the brim. The small owl beats his wings in a futile attempt to keep them dry. He retreats under the cover of leaves to wait for the rains to stop. If he gets too drenched before his feathers are fully formed, he's at risk for hypothermia. Not far off, Asiatic black bears enjoy the soaking. They're far too focused on the all-important business of feeding to worry about the weather. Unlike their neighbors, the Russian brown bear, Asiatic black bears are primarily herbivores. These bears will eat just about anything, but it's fall, and fat-rich foods like nuts help them pack on the pounds. They'll need plenty of body fat for insulation during the winter hibernation. Black bears peel bark from trees, eating the exposed sapwood for extra nutrients. A brutal winter is on the horizon, and bears that don't accumulate enough fat to survive the winter may die of starvation. The region of Primorye in Russia's Far East is swathed in dense forests. Its rivers swell with the monsoon rains. Floods of water pour down the mountains. Small streams swell into raging rivers, and trees topple like dominoes. The strong currents carry massive poplar and elm trees and dump them as the waters recede. Debris from the overflowing rivers is scattered everywhere. The young Blackiston's fish owl's front yard has changed, but he's dried out and ready to explore. As he gets closer to fledging, he must master the use of his huge talons and powerful wings. At 6 weeks old, He's nearly 2 feet tall and almost as heavy as his parents. He's also learning to preen his feathers. It's essential to prevent clumping after rain, vital for his warmth and insulation. As night falls, frogs serenade the forest with their mating calls. To the owl family, the frog choir translates into a dinner bell. Even owls need an occasional break from fish. Meanwhile, a raccoon dog prowls below. The most primitive of the wild dogs. It's just 20 inches long. While the owls watch from their perch, the dog sniffs out its supper. It can hear the frogs, but its poor eyesight means it must follow its nose. It's a successful night's hunt for both the raccoon dog and the owls. The vast Sikataline forest extends east to the coast, running right down to the sea's edge. Here, the rocky shores are home to a different community. Sika deer have adapted to a problem specific to the environment here. The constant rain, snow, and mist wash away sources of essential minerals normally found in the forest. To boost their diet, the deer must come to the shore to feed on salty kelp. But with the rare and deadly Amur tigers lurking in the forest, breaking cover is dangerous, and they are constantly on the alert. They're right to be cautious. One of the world's largest predators roams nearby. In the remote eastern region of Primorye, Russia's greatest predator comes out of the shadows. At about 800 pounds, this male Amur tiger needs to eat about 18 pounds of fresh meat a day. Deer is his favorite food, but the herd has already fled the exposed shore. For now, he'll make do with an abandoned carcass. This tiger is one of only about 500 left in the wild. Each tiger requires almost 800 square miles as its own. This tiger can't afford to pass up any meal. An Amur tiger can eat up to 90 pounds in one go, nearly a tenth of his own body weight. But he's nervous in broad daylight. He eats with growing discomfort. Something's not right. Perhaps it's the camera, although it's hidden a half a mile away. Amur tigers have no natural predators, except humans, who have driven them close to extinction. Up to 30 tigers are poached in Russia every year, almost 10% of the entire population. Increased logging and agriculture threatens their home, so it's no surprise they prefer to stay in the shadows. It's not easy turning down a free lunch, especially to crows. As he disappears, the reason for his anxiety comes into view. Incredibly, it's a second tiger. To capture a single Amur tiger on film in the wild is extraordinary, but to capture two is near miraculous. It's hard to believe there may come a day when seeing even a single tiger in the wild will be more than unlikely. It will be an impossibility. With the tigers safely out of the way, the vultures feast on the carcass, while thick-billed crows and sea eagles share the remains. What the crow lacks in size, it makes up in persistence. Only miles in from the shore, our cameras witness a miraculous event. A full year ago, thousands of mayflies laid their eggs on the lake bed. Now, the nymphs have transformed into adults, ready to take to the air. For a mere 2 astonishing moments at dusk and at dawn, a cloud of winged nymphs, like tiny white fairies, rise from the lake. First, there are thousands. Then millions. Then billions. In the space of just 24 hours, the mayflies mate on the wing, drop their eggs back into the water, and then, mission fulfilled, they die. They don't even stop to eat, but instead become a feast for others. Then, the silvery mist disappears for another year. It's September, and temperatures are beginning to cool over Primorye. In the wooded hills of the great Cicatilline forest, the trees turn to gold. Time is short for the animals. They must find food and shelter before the heavy snows arrive in just a few weeks' time. Rare musk deer make the most of the remaining leaves before they are buried under a white blanket. The males have short tusks rather than showy antlers, which would slow down their movement through the dense forest. Nearby, 2 Asiatic black bear cubs are experiencing their first leafy autumn. Their mother should be leading them to a den for the winter's hibernation, but she's nowhere to be found. The cubs' chances of survival are slim without their mother. In Russia's far east, in the region of Primorye, temperatures are plummeting as autumn comes to a close. These two one-year-old black bear cubs still need the assistance of their mother if they're to make it through the icy months ahead. But she's disappeared. It seems she's the poacher's latest victim. Still, the orphan cubs stand a chance of surviving the harsh winter if they locate a den soon. At least one of the cubs seems to have the right idea. His brother's more relaxed, but he's running out of time. At the lake, the lotus fields are dead. The frigid waters will serve as cold storage for 7 months, as winter throws an icy blanket across it. Frost has already put reeds into preservation. Nimble parrotbills hunt for insects hidden inside the stems. They'll sustain the birds through the lean months. Come January, winter arrives, full throttle, with temperatures plummeting as low as minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Forest waterways transform into glassy sheets of ice. Underneath, life gently winds down. Small fish will survive if the water holds enough oxygen. Some frogs and toads divert blood to the skin, pulling oxygen from the water. Their heart rate slows and can even stop as the temperature drops below freezing. Those that haven't developed in time miss their chance. Winter's harsh hand reaches the coast last. Ice slowly builds around its edges. Harlequin ducks will soon head for warmer climates. Meanwhile, they bob around like corks in the breakers and dive beneath the strong currents where shrimp, snails, and fish flourish. They can stay under for up to 15 to 20 seconds at a time. The duck's neighbors, the Larga seals, aren't quite so energetic. These 6-foot-long, blubber-clad torpedoes have no complaints about the coming winter. Except the ice disturbs sunbathing and makes getting out of the water somewhat trickier. Seals spend much of the winter swimming in the icy waters, unperturbed by the cold. Oil fish are their favorite food, But since they only come to the surface at night, the seals while away the daylight hours. Soon enough, snow arrives in all its fury, and time itself seems to freeze. A young Indian marten celebrates his first snow with childlike delight. This small mammal, related to weasels, minks, and wolverines, is plentiful in Primorye. Soon, when the novelty wears off, deep winter will slow even this playful marten. And this extraordinary land will come to an icy standstill. But for as long as this pristine land is protected, the spring thaw will once again reveal one of the richest collections of animals on Earth. Reigning over all is the Amur tiger. Primorye is its final refuge and only hope. For now, the big cat's future and that of the forest itself hangs in the balance. This magnificent tiger may be approaching the end of his millennia-long reign. Or he may be emerging as a symbol of hope for the vast primeval forests and the magnificent animals that take shelter here. Primorye is a refuge to some of our planet's rarest and most extraordinary creatures. The rivers and wetlands of the Amur Basin hold stories of nature's triumph and tragedy. This epic Russian wilderness holds many secrets for those who dare explore its wilds. But the most coveted secret of all is whether the creatures who claim this land as their own will be with us tomorrow.